Welcome back to our series we're calling Revival Arrival. We're looking at how to revive our faith in a number of different areas where it's easy to become a little unbelieving or somewhat doubtful. So far, we've talked about coming to a deeper faith that God can heal us, bring us a fresh new vision, take us to new levels, and perform mighty works and miracles in our lives. Today, I want to talk with you about greater love is coming. We all need love. As the first reading points out, it's not good for us to be alone. We need loving relationships, people who care about us, nurture us, guard our hearts, and keep us close to them and make us remember how special we are, the masterpiece that God created us to be. We also need to love other people, to serve them, to be with them, to lift them up, to encourage them, to defend their cause, and to help them pursue the dreams that God has put on their hearts and their best lives. Love is the most powerful force on earth, and to love and be loved makes life meaningful. But sometimes relationships can sour. Things go wrong. Misunderstandings, betrayals, lack of support. Many times, you may feel this in your own relationships. A loved one doesn't come through in a crisis. They let you down. A friend goes behind your back and does something devious. A coworker undermines you. A spouse is unfaithful. An adult child cuts you out of their life all of a sudden and for no particular reason. It's hard to understand. But when we close our hearts, when we forget that this is someone we love, things go wrong. It is easy to get angry when that happens. It's easy to harden our hearts. It's easy to give up on the relationship. It's so natural to want to get back at the person, get revenge, take revenge, give them the same thing that they've given you, a taste of their own medicine, the silent treatment, the cold shoulder. Who needs them anyway? I'm better off without them. Good riddance. But good relationships take work, a lot of work, especially when they become strained and problems arise and hard times come. And when we harden our hearts, it only makes things worse. Both people in the relationship end up isolating themselves from the other person. It's a way of protecting ourselves. We think that if we harden our hearts, they can't hurt us anymore. And they will see how upset we are and feel bad for what they did and come around and apologize in the end. The problem is, it doesn't work. If you want a loving relationship, you have to soften your heart, forgive the other person, let go of the grudge, and not allow that poison to kill the relationship and to destroy your own happiness. For the last 10 years, I have been deeply involved in an international Catholic ministry known as Retrovi. It's for married couples who are struggling in their relationship. Hard times have come. Despite the joy and the hope that they had on their wedding day, things went wrong in their relationship. And the problems they face can easily lead to discouragement and disillusionment, and many times a feeling of misery in the relationship. And couples face this. They usually stop talking to one another, except to coordinate day-to-day events, who's going to pick up the kids, who's going to take them to soccer practice. What they do instead is little by little start living their own lives, pursuing their own interests, like two ships passing in a night. The love that they once had seems lost forever, and now they just go through day to day like roommates or co-parents. In this ministry, Retrovi, we have a term for these couples. We call them Friday night couples. It's not meant to be critical or disparaging. We love them and we want to help them. We call them Friday night couples because, quite simply, they come to our 3-day weekend experience late in the afternoon on a Friday night. They come and they sit together, but you could cut the tension in the room with a knife. The body language is unmistakable. Arms are crossed, brows are furrowed, scowling looks, hard gazes, all kinds of negative body language. A lot of eye rolling is going on. It's difficult. You can see how hard it is for them to be there. That's because they have hardened their hearts. And it's heartbreaking to watch. In the gospel reading for today, Jesus addresses the challenging topic of divorce. And for those of us who have gone through a breakup like that, it can bring back painful memories, feelings of hurt and anger, and guilt and shame, all kinds of negative feelings. And the words that Jesus uses even sounds a little harsh, like he's blaming divorced people for what happened. But what he's actually doing is responding to a challenge from the Pharisees, men who had hard hearts themselves. They were trying to test Jesus, to trap him into saying something that would be unpopular with the crowds about a controversial issue like divorce. This would undermine his ministry if the crowds walked away from him. This was the Pharisees' plan. So they ask him, what does the law of Moses allow when it comes to divorce? Jesus turned it around on them. He said, what does the law say? They responded, Moses permitted a husband to write a bill of divorce and dismiss her, his wife. And in fact, they were correct. In Deuteronomy chapter 24, the law allowed a man to divorce his wife by writing a legal document called a bill of divorce and handing it to her when she displeased him and he found something indecent in her. Now, the law was ambiguous as to what indecent meant. For centuries, the rabbis argued over the proper grounds for divorce. Some said burning the dinner was indecent enough. He could write a bill of divorce. Others said it had to be more serious. Either way, the law was one-sided. Women could not divorce their husbands. So they turned to Jesus and say, well, what do you think? What's your interpretation of the law? Jesus would not take the bait. He refused to become embroiled in their legal debate. Instead, he got to the heart of the matter, and he looked at those men and he said, Moses permitted divorce because of the hardness of your hearts. The hardness of your hearts. To make his point, Jesus went back to the way God had intended things to be from the very beginning. In the first reading today, God decided to make a companion for the first man that he created and named Adam. First, God showed him all the birds of the air, the wild animals, the cattle in the fields. But as the passage correctly points out, none proved to be the suitable partner of the man. Adam needed someone more like him, someone who could think, speak, and relate in the same way. God cast Adam into a deep sleep so that he would not interfere with what God was going to do next, so that he would not resist what God was planning, so he would not tell God how to do it. And while he was asleep, God took a rib from Adam and formed a woman out of it. And when Adam woke up, he was greatly pleased. She was smart, intelligent, a good conversationalist, friendly, beautiful, a perfect partner in every way. It was the first relationship and the first marriage. Things were as they should be. Adam clung to his wife as his equal, and the two became one flesh. But pretty soon, things went wrong. There was a serpent who tempted them, and they ended up disobeying the one rule God gave. They ate the fruit from the one tree that was off limits. When God confronted them about this, they both denied responsibility. They refused to take responsibility for their actions. Adam said, "The woman you put here with me, she gave me the fruit, so I ate it." And he had the gall to pass the buck to God, basically saying, "It's your fault, God, for putting this woman here with me. She's the problem." He blamed his wife. In the same way, Eve, the first woman, the wife of Adam, she accused the serpent of tempting her. They were both playing the blame game, wouldn't take responsibility. There were serious consequences for their disobedience, one of which was that their relationship would become challenging from then on. God looked at the wife and he said, "You will desire to control your husband, but he will rule over you." It's not what God wanted. It was the natural consequences of their disobedience and their failure to take responsibility for their actions. Now, instead of love, peace, joy, equality, and mutual respect in the relationship, they would have problems from time to time. From that day forward, their hearts could become easily hardened toward one another. This is why we often suffer in our relationships today. It's so tempting to get sour over the wrong that someone has done to us and to harden our hearts towards that person. It's so easy to do that, and relationships are so fragile. One misstep can end a lifelong friendship. A single misunderstanding can unravel a rapport that took so long to build. A harsh word can ruin a romance in the making. One wrong move can send people you thought were on your side running for the hills. Years ago, in another parish, I was close with a family. They lived near the church, and they invited me over for dinner several times a month. They also included me in family celebrations and holiday get-togethers. We had wonderful conversations together, good times through the years. But then one Sunday, I did something stupid. I know you could never imagine me doing something stupid. The stupid thing was that I kind of made a joke during Mass, off the cuff. I always get myself in trouble when I do that. I forget to think through things. Sometimes I speak before I think. It really wasn't all that bad, but they took great offense. And even though the comment wasn't about them or had anything to do with them, they decided to cut all ties with me. The husband texted me and said they are now going to go to a different church, and they never wanted to see me again. I felt so bad. I kept apologizing over and over. I texted back, "I'm so sorry. Can we talk about this?" But they said, "No, the damage has been done. There's no use in trying to repair the situation. We have made up our minds." What they meant is they had hardened their hearts. They had hardened their hearts. If you want healthy relationships, strong family bonds, a loving marriage, camaraderie at work, close friendships that last, and a good spirit with the people around you, the key is to soften your heart when things go wrong. Don't dwell on the injury. Move past it. Find a way to forgive. Give people a break. Sometimes, we're all imperfect, and we're not always living up to our best selves. It's easy to brood over the injury, but true love forgives and moves on. The couples who lead that weekend experience, Retrovi, that I told you about, they always share their stories in the talks and presentations. They have experienced some of the worst misery in their marriages: adultery, addiction, domestic violence, depression, anger, shouting, name-calling, even self-harm. But these couples have experienced a renewal, a restoration, a rebirth in their relationships because they had the courage, they found a way, and they took the risk of forgiving each other and trying again. The story of Tony and Lolette is one of the most profound, in my opinion, and every time they tell it, I am deeply moved. After multiple affairs by Tony, Lolette gave up on the relationship. She hardened her heart like a stone. She was filled with bitterness and resentment. Tony justified his actions, refused to apologize. He just wanted what he wanted, and he didn't care what happened to the marriage. It seemed the next stop was divorce court. But then they came on one of these weekends, a Retrouvaille weekend, and by the end of it, they had hope again. Over the course of the weekend, Lolette's heart started to open ever so slightly. As she listened to the talks, she decided to take a chance. She gave Tony a white rose. She said it was a sign of her surrender, like a white flag, her surrendering her anger. She wanted a future with him after all. And little by little, she softened her heart. Turning it over to God, she found a way to start to forgive. And when she did that, when she softened her heart, Tony began to do the same. And the ice between them started to melt. Eventually, they experienced a revival in their faith and in their relationship. Today, they have one of the strongest marriages I have ever seen. And for the last 20 years, they have been leading these Retrouvaille weekends, giving hope to other struggling couples. I always love Sunday afternoons on those weekends because the atmosphere changes in the room. Most of those couples who came in Friday night so angry, rolling their eyes and, arms crossed and all of that, by Sunday, they're gazing lovingly into each other's eyes. They leave holding hands, arms around each other, a gentler demeanor about them. It's not a quick fix. They have a lot more work to do. The program isn't finished. But I always love those Sunday afternoons because hurting couples have found a way to begin to soften their hearts. We all have relationships that hurt sometimes. It's tempting to give up, walk away, say we don't need the other person, decide to go it alone. But whether it's a marriage or a friendship or some other kind of relationship, a parent-child relationship, you can't do life alone. And yes, it's important to recognize fully that some circumstances, some situations are so severe, so abusive, you do have to move on. And for those of us who have been through a breakup, a divorce, I want you to know that God loves you. He's not mad at you. He wants the best for you. He wants you to move on, and He's opening doors for you. He's bringing you the best, bright future if He hasn't already. So please let go of that guilt and that shame and move into the bright future God has in store for you. But for those of you who are in a relationship right now, whether it's marriage or friendship or coworkers or another relative, and you're having problems, here's my message for you today. Find a way to surrender your anger, to seek to forgive, and to soften your heart. You will find new hope, revival in the relationship, and greater love ahead.